Hello and welcome to a new episode of Geek Lunch Meat. I'm your host Chris, as usual, and finally, after years of waiting and delays, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is finally upon us. I saw it tonight at a preview screenings here in the UK, so it's time to give you my review and let you know, is it worth your time? Is it, is it what we've been waiting for? If you like this video, don't forget, hit the thumbs up, helps us out a great deal, lets more people view the videos, and if you've not already subscribed, why not mash that subscribe button? Like Mola Ram is about to pull your flaming heart out of your body, and it's the last thing you're ever going to do. So, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is upon us, the 5th Indiana Jones movie, and the first one not directed by Steven Spielberg. We've got James Mangold in the director's chair this time, and probably what you're wanting to know, first of all, is it better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? I'm happy to say, yes, it is. For a large portion of the movie, it is classic Indiana Jones. It felt very much like the original trilogy. No, it's not as good as the original trilogy, but they're some of the best adventure movies ever made. Raiders is probably the greatest adventure movie ever made. So it's got big shoes to fill. But yes, for a large portion of the movie, it's absolutely great. You then get to the the third act, the finale, and that's where it gets divisive, and I suspect that's where it will lose 50% of the audience. It's very much say the big finale is very much a love it or hate it. You either buy into the premise or you don't. I'll go into spoilers later on, but for this first part of this review, we'll keep it spoiler free. So the MacGuffin this time round, the plot device, that Indy is searching for is the Dial of Destiny, the anti-Thrakus Archimedes compass. It's a thing of many names, and it drives the plot forward as these things do, with Indy and the bad guys both trying to find it, and with the fate of the world in the balance. And as I said, for the majority of the running time, it is a rollickingly good adventure, up there, with some of the best of Indy's previous adventures. There are chase scenes galore, pretty much every style of transport. We've got planes, trains, cars, motorbikes, tuk-tuks, the little sort of motorized vehicles that you see in the trailer. That there's a big chase scene in Tangiers. There's boats, there's underwater sequences. You've got everything that you expect in an Indiana Jones adventure. There's exploring underground tombs. As I said, chase scenes galore. We've got booby traps, fist fights, shootouts, everything you'd expect from a 1930s serial adventure series. And for the most part, it's a fitting swan song for the character. Harrison Ford is 80 years old now, and his portrayal of Indy reflects that. We've got Indy towards the end of his career. He's retiring from being a professor, and the movie really does feel like a fitting sort of tribute, to the end of an era. I was particularly impressed that after the big prologue sequence at the beginning, which I'll get onto in a minute, the first time we see Indy as he is now, is Harrison Ford just in his boxer shorts, waking up. He's an old man. He looks his age. And then, he's shouting at kids. He's yelling at kids to turn their music down. He's a crotchety old man, that's about to retire from his job. It all feels very meta, with obviously the fact that this is, Harrison Ford's, last outing as Indy, and they've said, he will be the only person that will play Indy. There won't be anything more after. So we do get, a good feeling, that this is really the end. And Harrison Ford, he does an absolutely, great job. As we expected, he always does. And the script is written around his age. It's all appropriate. He never really does anything that you would expect a man of his advancing years, not to be able to do. It's a different style of action. This is appropriate to his age. It's different from what we would have got in Raiders of Lost Ark. And obviously he's backed up by Phoebe Waller-Bridge as Helana, his granddaughter. And she's there, and she does stuff, obviously being younger, that Indy can't do, but she never really steals the show. I know people was, the usual internet trolls were saying, from the very outset that it was going to be, the Helena show, and it was going to be, very feminist agenda, and that she would take over from Indy. It's nothing like that at all. That's just the usual, internet trolling. Her relationship with Indy is great, and evolves over the course of the film. She starts off as just a sort of, she's a thief. She's all about the money, whereas Indy's trying to teach her, that it's more about, he says several times, this belongs in a museum, and it's a very good relationship the two have. And going on to the bad guys, obviously got Mads Mikkelson as Voller, the Nazi. He is fantastic. He starts off his role. He's been helping the Americans as part of the space race, helping them with their rockets. But obviously he's got a hidden agenda, and he's after this Archimedes compass for his own nefarious devices. Things I was worried about, things that didn't work in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull for me were the fact that it was obviously it was Indy in advancing years, so the setting, it's not got that 1930s serial adventure. For me, Temple of Doom is one of my favorite films of all time because it's pure adventure. It's Indy and they're out in the middle of nowhere, and they're in underground temples and things like that. And once you start bringing it into the 50s, as Kingdom of the Crystal Skull did, and and never spent far too long in civilization. I was worried it was going to happen with this film. Obviously, now we're into the 60s now. It's getting quite modern, and that sort of style of adventurer doesn't really fit. But I'm happy to say, in Dial of Destiny, it really does work. I'm not quite sure what it is that differentiates it from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But just the way it was shot. I mean, James Mangold, he's done a really good job. Spielberg sort of dropped the ball on Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, even though it was filmed on 35mm film. It looks artificial. I think that's to do with the director of photography that he's been using, and it looks very artificial and very CG. Whereas this is actually filmed digitally, but looks much more like the original films. And as I say, even though the opening, a lot of there's big sequences in New York in the 60s. You've got people with afros and the sort of leather jackets, but it really actually still works. And then there's a lot more where they're out, say they're diving down to underwater wrecks and going into ancient tombs, and it really does still feel like that sort of 1930s serial adventure. And then of course the best thing for that is the opening sort of 15-20 minutes prologue, set in the sort of late 1930s 40s, with a young Indy, and for the most part it does work. There's the shot in the original teaser trailer where they take the bag off his head and you've got the young Harrison Ford there. It looks stunning. A lot of it does work. There are several bits that do look like very good CGI, but it is CGI. But it's some of the best de-aging that I think I've ever seen. Strangely, Indy spends a lot of that time in that opening sequence disguised in German uniform. When he puts his fedora on, all the shots afterwards look a lot better. I don't know what it is. It just seems, a lot of it is it's set at night, and he's sort of in and out of sort of various different lighting situations, which helps sort of hide the effects. But yeah, once the hat's on, it's very, very convincing after that. It's still not there to the point where you could watch a whole movie, especially obviously then in daylight scenes and things like that. Some of it you do say, oh yeah, that's a nice looking piece of CGI. It'd be interesting to see how it plays on further viewings. I always find these things, once you've acknowledged the fact that it's CG, on further viewings it tends to get better. Like with Star Wars Rogue One, with Tarkin, I find, having now watched it quite a few times, it really sort of helps. You don't really notice the CG as much. So yeah, so it'd be interesting to see how it goes with this. The one thing I will say about the prologue, I think it probably goes on too long. The film seems like it runs long. It is sort of 2 hours 20 minutes odd, sort of the longest Indiana Jones film. And it does seem to drag a bit. I think it could be tightened up. There are, say, lots of chase sequences on various different forms of transport. I think they could be tightened up a bit. Some of them lost. I think one of the main issues with the running time is usually, in all the other movies, the little prologues you get at the beginning, the sort of cold openings, they tend to be quite short and don't really sort of have much of an effect on the ongoing plot. They're sort of quite separate. With Dial of Destiny, the opening prologue is very intertwined with the story going forward, and they spend a lot more time on it, and it does add to the running time. So yeah, I definitely think it could be cut and make it a tighter film. I think would make it better. The music, John Williams, he always hits these things out of the park. He's done another great job. He uses a lot of old themes, I noticed, so especially this prologue. The prologue feels very much like Last Crusade. They start off in a castle and escaping from the Germans, and then they're on this train, and there's a sort of motorbike involved as well. It feels very much like Last Crusade, and I did notice loads of musical cues from Last Crusade used, and then throughout the rest of the film, lots of different cues, especially from Last Crusade. John Williams seems to be heavily falling back on that, which is great. Last Crusade is one of my favourite soundtracks, so I wasn't bothered. But yeah, I didn't really. There weren't really any outstanding themes, new themes for me. You've got that. You've got the classic Indiana Jones theme that pops up whenever anything really exciting happens, which is always great to hear. But I think it's going to take a few more watches and a few listens to the soundtrack separately to actually sort of start to differentiate some of the new music. I was quite surprised. I was wondering how they were going to deal with Sheila Buff's character, obviously Indy's son, Mutt. Obviously, wasn't going to be in the film, and the way they deal with that, I won't go into any spoilers at this point, but it actually adds some sort of more emotional resonance to the character, far more than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull ever did. They've actually sort of made Mutt almost a plot point and sort of a factor in pushing Indy into sort of doing the various things that he does. So I thought, it was very interesting, from that point of view. So, just a warning, I want to go into spoilers a little bit because I want to talk about the third act finale, which I can't really do without spoilers. So, if you haven't seen the film yet and you don't want to be spoiled, just know that, I really enjoyed it. It's a really good old-fashioned adventure movie, very much like the first three Indiana Jones movies. Just suffice to say, the third act, you may or may not like it, depending on how you go with it. But yeah, go and see it for yourself and check it out and make your mind up. But now, if you're still watching, we'll go into a bit of spoiler territory, mostly concerned with the third act. As I've said, you'll either like it and you sort of have to go with it, or it's really going to pull you out of the movie. For me, it didn't quite work. It didn't annoy me enough to ruin the movie for me. I just think that everything up until that point, it was a absolutely brilliant Indiana Jones movie. And you get to the point, there's it's all to do with time travel, activating the Dial of Destiny, as has been sort of speculated on all along, and they fly back in time. Now, I haven't got a problem with that. I know people had a problem with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, with these sort of aliens, multi-dimensional beings. I didn't massively have a problem with that because at the end of the day, the Ark, is God, is God, the power of God coming down. Temple of Doom had people, ripping hearts out of people, and they were still surviving. And obviously, the whole Last Crusade with the Holy Grail and immortality and all that thing. No one had a problem with the supernatural elements like that. The problem with Dial of Destiny for me is all those previous films, you get fleeting glimpses of things. You sort of see the raw power of the Ark, and the supernatural bits are sort of hinted at, but aren't massively elaborated on. With Dial of Destiny, it's in your face. They go back in time, and they go back too far, right back to this this battle 2,000 years ago, and then Indy and Helena actually meet Archimedes, who created the Dial of Destiny, and there's that interaction, and there's a big section here, and again for me this is a bit that could have been really cut down. And it's the sort of thing, if it was in a comic book, if it was in a video game, you would just accept it. But in a movie that's mostly based in reality, you have to either just go with it and accept it. And I think a lot of people won't. It annoyed me a bit. I say it went on too long. If they they go through this rift in the airplane, they go back. If they had sort of briefly glimpsed, we've gone back, far too far, here we are, and it's thousands of years ago. If they had sort of flown over, witnessed, what was going on in this battle, and then had gone back through the rift, I think that would have been okay. It would have, it would, yeah, it's that supernatural, time travel element. But it's brief, and it's, you can sort of like gloss over it. But to have them actually sort of, land, parachute down, actually talk to Archimedes, and Indy talks about staying, and then, Helena punches him and, knocks him out, to bring him back to modern day. It's a bit too much for me. It's a shame. Right up until that point, I was absolutely loving the film. It doesn't completely break it for me. I still really enjoyed the movie. Yeah, just personally, that sequence, maybe if it was just cut down a lot shorter, which would help with the running time. I think the film is a bit too long, as I've said. But I can imagine there are some people, when it gets to that point, are going to absolutely hate it, and that's going to be a big deal breaker for them. Which is a shame. Yeah, but if that's the way you feel, that's the way you feel. For me, though, except for that sort of, that section where they go back in time, the rest of the film works like gangbusters. Really feels like an old school Indiana Jones adventure movie, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. And it was great to see. Yeah, it was great to see Salah back. It was great to see Marion back at the end. It really worked. It was a great swan song for Indiana Jones. Obviously, they've said they're not going to do anything else with Indy. Obviously without Harrison Ford. And I just hope we get to see new comic books, new novels. There's the video game in the works, which was announced quite a long time ago in the little teaser trailer. I mean, we've had nothing since, but I've said in my other videos looking at the Indiana Jones books and comics that you can check out. Disney don't seem to. I don't know if I didn't have much faith in this movie. There's no comic book tie-ins. There's no novels. There's just a few action figures they've done, mostly relating to the older indie movies, which is a real shame. I hope that we get some more indie adventures. We're not going to get it on the big screen, and it looks like they're not going to go a TV series route, even though with the Kihu Kwan's Renaissance at the moment, a TV show featuring Short Round, I think would be fantastic. But yeah, at least give us some comic books, give us some novels. Say get this video game going. We want some more indie adventures. So anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with my assessment? Did the sort of time travel element totally bring you out of the movie, or were you okay with that? Always love to hear from you all in the comments. So thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory. Eat, geek, and be merry.